Hello and welcome back around the bonfire. It's the show wondering if you, yes you, the humble listener, can play attacking midfield. We're asking for a friend. It's I want to say great to be back, but it's not because in 4 short weeks, this is the second time we've seen the Fire blow a lead and lose a game 2-1 that I think we all felt like they should win. John, back in with Tim to talk a little bit of Chicago Fire football here. Tim, how are we feeling now? Almost 24 hours out from final whistle.
Yeah, it did not feel like a great game. My first thing in the five things was the vibes are off because they just felt like they've been off this year. And I think, we're going to talk about why in this one. And I think there's maybe a broader conversation on what's changed. And I think the frustrating thing is it doesn't feel like the team has to be worse than they were last year. It just feels like that's sort of where we are.
Yeah, certainly a mixed bag leaving that one. Some things felt good, some things felt worse than normal. But let's get into it, right? We'll talk a little bit of news before we go. First and foremost, shout out to the boys to men in red, or better known today as the Fire's first team bench, essentially beating Chattanooga FC 2-1 at the Geek. Good performances from Jason Shukaluk, from Dylan Borso, and a few other guys as well. Pusodite Jean really kind of showing off some of his fancy footwork in there. It was 7 of 11 plus Owen Pratt, who's kind of on a different deal. Our Fire first teamers, guys we saw on the bench as recently as last night. Some even played last night too. So a couple of those guys going double duty.
Yeah, it's always kind of struck me as funny when there's guys leaving Soldier Field at 11 p.m. and then it's like, hey, 12 hours later, you want to be at SeatGeek? And it's like, as a player, you have to say yes, but you're probably just like, the number of ways the answer is no.
Yeah, literally. What do you mean I just had to sit on the bench for an hour and a half when it was freezing and now I have to play?
Yeah, and I
At
went on and
SeatGeek.
ran for 2 minutes, and just as I was starting to be able to feel any part of my body again, you're sending me back out there. Although it was
Well,
warmer
hey,
today, so hey, whatever.
yeah. Well, hey, speaking of guys who got to run around for a few minutes, Victor Radojevic made his first team debut last night. We've certainly talked about him not making his first team debut enough that I felt it was worth mentioning. He got to play in a real game that mattered, although they didn't catch it on the broadcast, unfortunately, so it wasn't actually announced during the game. But hey, exciting for him, even though not the result he would have won.
One thing on that, there's a lot that wasn't caught on the broadcast in both English and Spanish, and I think it's worth maybe saying a little bit about it. Um, I'm working on some coverage on this. I'm not sure when it's going to come out. MLS made the decision to take some games and produce them fully remotely, meaning there's not a producer in person there. For English, everyone is in London. My understanding is for Spanish, they have a producer on scene, but then the rest of the crew deciding what shots are on TV and stuff like that are in London. And there's a lot of stuff we haven't seen. We haven't seen replays. We haven't seen, some VAR reviews. We've seen focuses on one player getting up from being tackled when a goal is about to get scored. And it's been bad. And I think one of the things that was bad kind of came up in this game where there was an interruption in play. And if you were watching the English language broadcast, you had no idea what was going on. In Spanish, they were able to get more information. And I just have to assume, based on, they said it was our producer who found this out, that it was having an in-person person there that's not on the air, being able to figure those things out and talk to the appropriate people and get answers for the viewers and listeners during the broadcast rather than, hey, why didn't we see any soccer for 4 minutes during a soccer game?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that nobody really thinks about until you have to, right? It's like, oh, the announcers don't just magically know everything that's going on at all times with the games. They have an entire team of producers and staff whose job it is to communicate that information up to them, right?
And it's like we have been so lucky to have the quality of TV production we've had. I mean, not necessarily in MLS as much 100% of the time, but overall, right? You just assume when you're watching sports on TV, you get to see the action on TV. You don't even think of who decides to show this angle versus that angle? Who decides that, it's time to zoom in on this one player? Who decides that you need to show the view from behind the goal or whatever at this moment? It just is automatic. And those are people making those decisions. And they just typically have been very good at their jobs.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe it'll be a new AI feature, Tim. You can choose your own camera angles.
Dude,
Or
if
AI
Apple,
will.
that's the thing. It's all getting streamed out. Why not give people that? Why not give viewers a tactical cam? Anyways, different story. High horse.
They should do the whole thing on a drone. Anyway, no. So just
They
to
should have
run
the
through,
drones playing the soccer game.
I would watch that. I would actually watch that. Look,
I
okay,
feel like it'd be so bad, so
let's
bad.
let's talk a little bit of match facts here. It was 80 minutes of the most unbearable soccer you've ever seen, and then Hugo Kuipers converts a penalty after Jackson Hopkins touches the ball with his hand inside the box. That tends to be a problem, as the Fire would find out later on. Matty Pelatola does respond almost right away after Mbazeli Mboaze sets him up beautifully with a great assist right to the top of the box, sets up Matty Pelatola for that goal. And then 90 plus 5, Jonathan Dina, maybe shoved a little bit, maybe just running. His arm swings out at an awkward angle, catches the ball with his back completely turned to it. That's another penalty. Tai Baribo doesn't really miss penalties. He scores the eventual winner for DC United before the Fire make a few last minute changes that unfortunately don't impact the game. Um, Tim, I think you summed it up well in your five things. The vibes are off. This was another game where from jump nothing really seemed to go right for the Fire, despite threatening a lot. Kind of high level. You want to give me like your 10-second takeaway from this one?
I don't know that the Fire really threatened a lot. I think that they had possession. I think that they had pressure. I don't think that they got into dangerous areas in situations where someone is given time and space.
Yeah, let me rephrase. They had the ball in dangerous areas a lot. They didn't necessarily do anything with it. And let's
Well,
start.
they had the ball. I don't know that again. Like they would get into the box, and then there would be, a bunch of guys from DC that were around it. Like it didn't feel. There were some moments, right? And I think you've got to give the Fire credit for that. The Fire had the better chances. I think the best chance of the game that didn't become a goal ended up in the back of the net and was called off late in the first half. So that was probably the best chance in that half. But like the Fire had the better chances other than that one best chance, but it just wasn't enough, and it didn't feel like a goal was imminent. And that's kind of been a theme for a couple of days now. Some of that's the opponent, some of that's the way that they play, because DC was very compact. They were happy to sit back and counter. They were happy to get bodies everywhere, but they were good at it, right? And the Fire didn't have answers.
Let's start. I think maybe with something we've danced around a little bit and haven't dove into fully yet. That being kind of okay. Look, let me PG this up a little bit. The takeaway I came away with that I had on online last night, right? It was you bought the groceries, you cooked the meal, and it's still the dinner from Rapper's Delight. Like nobody's interested in eating at your house, right? Not very good. It does feel like some of the additions we've seen this offseason for as good as last year was. Robin Ludd yet to come up to speed. Anton Saletros largely anonymous through large stretches of the game, and we saw that last night where it didn't seem like the Fire had any ability to play centrally. Everything was pushed through the wings, and it was kind of 50-50 on if you broke through that last line.
Honestly, the Fire played a lot through the wings last year. I think the problem was the Fire when the ball would they were having problems getting the ball to dangerous people in dangerous areas at the exact moment.
Can
And I
I
think
can
that
I
that's
push?
yeah.
I think the important distinction to me here is like they didn't have an inability to play centrally last year. You could move the ball in to Brian Gutierrez, to Andre Franco when he was available, even to Sergio Orhel at times, right? That was one of the things he did really well, was carrying the ball and progressing the ball through midfield. There doesn't seem to be an ability to do that. It seems to have to go out through the center back, through the fullback, and then up the wing with a bit of an interchange. Maybe it doesn't seem like the guys in the middle of the field are able to get involved well.
I mean, I I think we just are going to disagree about this. Like Anton Saletros, I thought had a pretty solid game. He had 113 touches. He did a pretty good job with advancing the ball in a lot of places. He had an imperfect game. Um, I I think that people were not being asked to do the right job, right? And I think when you look at the game that Zinkernagel had, like if you were able to watch Zinkernagel every action that he had on and off the ball throughout the night, he actually had a pretty strong game. The problem was he didn't have a strong game in a way that enabled him to connect to others. And I think that's one of the things that, like, Brian Gutierrez, there were times that we would criticize him for not really having that big of an influence in the game last year, but he was able to connect to others who would connect sometimes to someone else who would connect to somebody, and it would become a thing. And that's what the Fire didn't have last night. Now, you mentioned Robin Lod. I think it's it's been a surprise that we have seen him starting on the right wing and Zinkernagel starting in a more central midfield role. I brought it up to both Zinkernagel after the game as well as to Berhalter. Berhalter did make an interesting point that, Lode's coming back from an injury, and I don't know how close he is to being 100%. But it just seems to me that we have enough tape to know that Zinkernagel is very good on the right wing, right? Like 15 goals, 15 assists last year. I think he doesn't do the job that Andre Franco was doing. He doesn't do the job that Brian Gutierrez was doing in terms of connecting. I think he can be effective in the midfield. I still think you need another person that is doing those connecting things is one part. And then the second part is I just think he's very effective on the right wing. Even with less than ideal service, I think the Fire have the pieces to be getting him some stuff, some service enough at the time where he would be more of a difference maker playing there than where we're seeing him. And when you look at some of his best moments last night, a lot of them, he was in a very free, like he basically could go where he wanted. He was roaming around different parts. And I think that was the job description. He was most effective when he was playing close to the right wing, but he was never able to get up as high as he did last year.
Okay, let's build on that, right? Because one thing I was thinking about watching this game is we have seen more so in the last, I think, 4 matches than at any time in Gregg's tenure. That exact thing, right? That ability for the three guys across the top, just behind Phillips or just behind Hugo Kuipers, to kind of play wherever they'd like across that front line, right? We've seen at times John, like it felt like in 2025, the attack was very, I don't want to say strict, but it felt a little more typical Gregg Berhalter of you have your role, you have your position, and you're mostly staying there. Obviously, the wings are going to tuck in, the fullbacks are going to overlap. Like there's a lot of that, but it does feel like I saw Jonathan Bamba at multiple times last night playing where you would expect to see Anton Saletros, which is not only farther back, but the other side of the field from where he starts, right? You see Philip Zinkernagel playing inside. You see Robin Ludd moving outside, even outside of Leo Bajoso at times. Like I'm part of me wonders if there's this kind of feeling like we don't really have a like for like for Brian Gutierrez or Andre Franco with one gone and the other still injured. And so we're just kind of trying to make something out of nothing. And if that's as a whole making the team worse.
I think that that probably exaggerates large parts of it. But I think that there is something there about what you said. Like, I think on one hand, being more free flowing in the attack, I think is good. And it's good. Like we saw, like Leo Barroso cut in centrally a few times, and like I think that that could be pretty effective rather than just him making it down. Getting the ball, flinging it across. It does not feel like things are working. I wonder how much of it is necessity, not so much with Franco out, but with Franco out and players being injured or unavailable. And maybe not able to practice at 100% throughout the week, and if we'll continue to see it to evolve. Because I think when you look at the starting 11 that the Fire fielded in this one, that's a starting 11 that should have had enough to beat DC United and to be able to break through their lines and to be able to do the things that didn't happen last night. Well, 2 nights ago, 3 nights, whatever that is from when you listening to this. And so the question is, like, why didn't we see that? Because I think the talent's there, and I think that it's not a question of there being a nothing somewhere, or there. A lot of teams play through wide areas, like that's basically Berhalter ball, right? Of like you want to drag guys onto you, open up some space, do a switch to a wide area. You have the middle, and you can play through the middle sometimes, but it's that disorganizing teams that really gets you things.
To that point, though, you don't have the ability to play in the middle of the field right now. You just don't. Sure, I may be being a bit hyperbolic there. Like they can, it doesn't work, right? There's no threat in the middle of the field because like all of the Fire's best attackers play wide, except for Hugo Kuipers. But it's very difficult to connect to Hugo Kuipers if you don't have that threat of coming inside. And now they can not only get out on you, right? There's nobody to keep the center of the pitch honest, right? That was one thing Brian Gutierrez did very well last year when we talk about his goal scoring, was being that threat at the top of the box. The Fire haven't replaced that. And I think that's what we maybe thought Anton Saletros would be doing a bit of, right, early in this year, just kind of being a guy who kind of sits on the edge of the attack and can step forward to either clean up passes or to be a threat there. They don't have anybody in that role right now, and I think I think it's hindering them quite a bit.
I think Silautros could be doing it better if there was somebody doing other parts of it in front of
him.
Can
I let's put it this way. Clarify one thing really quick?
Yeah.
I don't even know that I'm criticizing Anton Saletros there. More just somebody needs to fill that role, and that doesn't seem to be maybe it's just not what he's being asked to do. Right?
Yeah, I didn't think you were right. I think that's the issue. I think that the problem is you've got a bunch of tools. You know what I mean? Like you can cut your lawn with a pair of garden shears, it's not going to be a good result, and you're not going to have a fun time doing it, right? It's Garden shears are great. They can do like the right tool. It's if it's the right tool, it's the right tool. It's using something that's not the right tool in for the situation you're using it in. And I think that's what we're seeing. Like Zinkernagel, I thought like I talk in my 5 things about the game that he has statistically speaking. He did a lot of things. I don't think he did what ultimately makes him most effective for the team. And just because he can do those things in a game, like the fact is he did those things in a game, and it never really looked like the Fire were about to. I mean, they did have chances, and they were close to goal a couple times. It's not like it never happened, but there was never sustained pressure of over a 5-10 minute span. But you can just feel the goal is coming, and the goal never came. Right, like the one goal is off a penalty.
And
Um,
we even said beforehand he didn't really even look like he was playing that well, right? Like I think watching back, you can say he was doing the right things, but in the moment, it didn't really feel like he was playing his best ball.
I thought he had a strong game at the time. I mean, again, like, but again,
Fair, yeah,
it wasn't an effective game,
reasonable,
right? Like,
yeah,
yeah, like it was not his best, and it wasn't classic Zinkernagel of like there were games that you just felt like he was going to end up in the box score. A couple of times he didn't. More often than not, he did. And this didn't feel like one of them. So it's the longest stretch he's gone without a goal contribution in his time in MLS now. Um, the Fire have gone 270 minutes plus God, mountains of stoppage time without scoring a goal in open play. So yeah, I mean, look, it's not great. I think that it's part of it is I think Zingernagel's role is undefined, right? I think that if you said, Zink, your job is to do the version of what Andre Franco did for the team last year that you can do, he could be effective in that. I think you're leaving a lot on the table because I think you're leaving his ability to do the things that made him so effective last year on the table. I personally think Robin Lod would be the best candidate for doing that, and I don't know why we haven't seen that. And it's, hey, Robin, like your job is to get the ball to Bamba, get the ball to Hugo, get the ball to Zink, and if they're doing that or like they're in a dangerous space, and if you see the shot, you take the shot and you make yourself another person they've got to play against. I think that could really be effective. And I think if that is happening, then I think the things that you said you wanted to see from Anton Celotros, I think it just simplifies the job description for everyone around that attack.
yeah, sure, and well, and that's what, and I think that's kind of brings back to my point very early on in this, right? Of like there is there's not enough structure, right? There is a lot of, hey, you guys are 4 great players, go do your thing, like I don't know that that's how this group thrives, right? And I don't think it's necessarily even a criticism of the players in that sense. It's more just let's be honest about who these guys are. And frankly, like if you're going to have 4 forwards, which is how they played last night, right? I think one of those forwards has to be Marin Haile Selassie. I don't think
Yeah,
Robin Lod has played well enough as a forward. To your point, I think I maybe misunderstand. It
well,
sounds like you want to
winger,
see him more as a
we
midfielder.
can, yeah, I think that there's an active debate that we could have about whether this is something I've gotten stuck in the middle of, and I'm like, I don't really care. Um, in a 4-3-3, sure, they're in the forward group, I guess. Are they really forwards if they're on the wing? Like,
I take this more as a 4-2-3-1 with three, yeah, with the front 4 all being forwards.
see, yes. At the same time, it's sort of a 4-3-3 in that the roles of the 3 midfielders are like the 3 people in the first 3 going from back to front. Are all kind of distinct. I like what it doesn't really matter though, because in the end, it's just you're just coming up with a shorthand way of talking about it. Now we're talking a lot about it, so it's not a shorthand anymore. Um, I don't think Load has been effective where he is. I think that he had some good touches on the ball. I think that he had some good individual moments. I don't think that he looked effective, and I don't think that he looked very confident. Um, and we know that he can be very good in MLS playing. I mean, he's been good on the wing, so it's not like this is the first time he's ever been asked to play there. But we know he can be good other places, and this isn't working out. I don't know when we're not going to see it. I personally would want to see Zinkernagel on the right wing again, Load at the 10, and if it's not going to be that, then I would like to see Marin starting on the right wing and Zink at the 10, and you can kind of go from there. You know,
let's dig in on that a little bit. Greg post game talking about this kind of asked about what's going on with the attack in general. He said we need to get our attacking group right, who's playing with who and how we're lining up. He kind of repeatedly emphasized this need for more speed, more intensity. I won't comment specifically on the intensity because I feel like in terms of guys you trust to be locked in day out, Robin Ludd is on that list, right? Just like a very consummate vet, knows what he's doing. I think the speed is a fair criticism. I think of the four guys of those, kind of guys in that attacking group, if we want to call it that, slowest to the four and slower than Marin Haile Selassie, certainly. I like your comment, the idea of playing Robin Ludd at the 10. I think that makes more sense if it's a Brian Gutierrez-esque 10 as opposed to what they've been trying to do. Do you feel like that's a kind of a fair statement on the idea, if that makes sense?
I think it's a simpler 10 than what we've been seeing, where like Zink kind of called himself a 10 when we spoke to him after the game. I don't really see that as much. Um, what's funny is like he said we have to get the attacking group right. And then it was like two questions later, I asked Berhalter about, what he thought about Lode's performances so far on the right wing when he's been effective as a midfielder as well. And he said, basically, that's when he pointed out that he's coming back from injury. He said, we'll talk to him and we'll show him the video and everything like that. But he's played right wing all preseason and he was comfortable there. So it didn't take much to make the decision to start him there, he means. He's just getting back into it. He didn't start last game. He didn't start the game before. He was out, so he's getting into it. He'll be fine. So I'm not disputing that he can be fine, right? Like we've seen how effective he can be in MLS. It's a question of if it's the place that he's most effective with this squad and the pieces around him. And look, maybe it is just he's still 70%, 75%, 80% good enough to play. I still would rather have had Marin Haile Selassie at, than 75% Robin Lod. But, I mean, there's a lot of reasons I'm not paid big bucks to decide lineups and a lot of other things around coaching a team, and maybe this is one of them.
Well, and look, I mentioned the idea of at this point I find it hard to say if you're starting your best 11 players, Robin Lod is starting, right? I just think Marin Haile Selassie is better at the moment. Again, I think the idea of thinking a little more long term of getting
But
guys
you also
together
then
and
think that Zinkernagel hasn't been that effective in that number 10 role. And so the question is, do you think that simplifying the role gets you that, or do you think that it's try load at the end? Because we have not seen him really playing that role in a 4-3-3 or a back four, right? And by the way, like after the game, Zink also brought up the fact that the Fire have not been able to play the same formation game in and game out. Like that kind of made the five things too of like it's been back three, back four, or back 3/5, three center backs, two center backs, three center backs, two center backs. And that makes it hard. I mean, four changes in the starting 11 in this one versus the last one. Some of that's good, right? Like you're glad that Hugo Kuipers is healthy, especially because Mueller wasn't fit enough to make the bench. And so it's definitely, I mean, you definitely want him there because he is. Some of the other changes I think were significant as well. And it's not ideal to have to change that many people in your starting 11 week to week.
certainly. Well, and at the risk of now maybe adding into the pile there, we talked about Martin Haile Selassie. I think the other name worth bringing up in all this, especially with look, we can I think argue back and forth a little bit about how good Anton Saletros has been. You're a little more positive on him than I am. Not that I think he's been bad, right? The other name I think is sitting out there is Sergio Orahel, right? It's a guy who we saw contribute at a pretty high level last year, not perfect by any means, and certainly you'd be downgrading defensively, although I do think there's maybe some upside offensively, right? He's played, I think what 15 minutes on the season. He featured against Houston and hasn't seen the field since. I feel like you're missing out on a good creative player in a moment where you don't have a lot of good creativity running through your midfield.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm surprised we haven't seen him because we did see him relied on a lot through the stretch last year and also early on, right? My thing about Saletros is I think there's a job to be doing that involves defending that the Fire kind of needs something of that. Anton hasn't been perfect, but he's been pretty decent. He's also been pretty good at progressing the ball, but it's one of those things where like you don't notice it unless you rewatch the game and are looking for him to be making passes where he's
It's
doing that, and then you're
tough
like,
to
oh,
measure.
it is there, right? Well, American Soccer Analysis does measure it, and he
Fair.
had,
That
um,
doesn't mean it's not hard. It just means they work hard.
and he had the third, well, for passing as an individual component of increasing the Fire's chances of scoring goals. He was the third best player on the pitch for the Fire, in terms of, or actually, is it second in passing? Second in passing, a little bit behind Zingernagel last week. So, I mean, that is what it is, right? It is surprising and a little sad in a way to see Sergio Orahel about a year after, actually in a game where against Sean Johnson in Toronto was when he almost scored that goal, and you just felt like you knew that he was going to get that first goal in MLS last year, and it didn't happen for him, although because of the fingertips of Sean Johnson. And then we're seeing him play, what was it, like 80 plus minutes against Chattanooga and for Fire 2, which, I mean, it's good he's getting minutes, right? And like that may be part of it is like, let's get him some minutes under his belt because we could be relying on him a lot more next week. But still not what I'd hope to see.
This is something I hadn't fully fleshed out, so I didn't put it in the outline, but I'm curious your thoughts on it. It feels like there are, you look at the starting 11, and it feels like, although I think we would agree there is talent behind the guys who are starting, it is not the most competition filled 11. Right. And what I mean by that, right, of course, I think we would both agree Philip Zinkernagle, Hugo Kuipers, Jonathan Bamba should be starting every game they're available for. Jack Elliott, Chris Brady, both should be starting every game they're available for. But you look at like the other, what is that, 6 players? You look at the other
That's
six
six out of
players.
11. So you're down to 5 players where you think there's competition. And I think that maybe there is competition. I mean, again,
But
this
I
is one
mean,
of those
this,
things. I think we have to talk about this game. And I think that there's things we can learn from this game. It's 4 games into the season and it's been disappointing somewhat so far. I don't think that we know that much at this point. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's important not to over index it while also indexing it. Now, can moving the conversation along a little bit, something that's kind of bugged me since you said it in the rundown at first, saying that Mboazi created a pass to like set up the goal is
don't,
it's what
you cannot
look,
pretend like that's not exactly what happened.
it's technically true, which I know everyone agrees is the best kind of true, but in that sequence, how many Fire players had a foot or a toe or even possession of the ball and were not able to do anything successfully with it? So yes, Mboazi was the last one there, but I thought it was a lazy clearance from Leo in a way. I think it was Anton did something, and I don't think that he knew what he was doing. I think he was trying to imitate what he just saw from Leo Barroso. You know, it was enough different Fire players had something, a part ownership of that it just has to be a team goal. Now, like Mboazi, I think that was not the right decision from him. We've seen him make the wrong decision several times. It's gonna happen, right? And like that was one of the times that it happened. But to say that like that just because that mistake is the one that ultimately killed you, it's like playing a game of Russian roulette and then blaming the one time that the bullet is in the right chamber for the one that kills you.
Let me maybe phrase it like this. I think you can say that goal is the plurality of the blame for that goal is on his shoulders, and still say he was maybe like not the most at fault. Does that make sense? Like, yeah, I think that individual action probably was the most helpful to
It directly led to
DC scoring a goal, right?
It directly
And
led to the goal.
frankly,
That's fair
it
to
was
say.
just it wasn't even good form. Like, and look, and okay, I say this to say, like, I just, to me, even watching it back, it just felt like just not a great game from him, and that's okay, right? I want to emphasize, like, he's 20 years old, 20-year-old defender. You don't see that very often in first divisions for a reason, right? So like let's level set there, and you expect him to make mistakes. You expect him to make big mistakes, and that's okay. It does not mean he should be benched. I want to say that. But that doesn't mean you don't have to deal with the consequences either, right? I thought that was a poor game from him, and I thought that was another expression of a poor game at large. And I will also say, he was not the only problem. He was not the only problem on
Right.
that play. He
So
was not
here's
the only problem on that back line. But it is a problem when, well, actually, no, he was playing on the left. So I was about to say when he's paired with Leo Boso, but he wasn't.
well,
Yeah,
he was close to Leo. I mean, it was that everyone was
in
in the
that
box
play,
into the beginning
yes.
came
Yeah, it
back
was
in.
different.
So look, here's what Greg said about the play. When you look at the goal we conceded, it was a number of missed tackles, missed clearances, then wide open space at the top of the box. And it actually starts from us trying to press for the winger against the center back. And that's why a center mid had to go wide. And then it's a whole chain of events that happens. So it was a system issue. It was a number of players on the pitch going all the way up to the pitch, basically. And then he said, in the end, we have individual battles there to make up for that mistake, and we didn't do it. And I think that that's the sum of it. Like, Mboazi didn't do it, Leo didn't do it, Anton didn't do it. Like, you had 3 opportunities where players made contact with the ball in the box, and they all cleared it out of the box, and none of them cleared it away. Like, so to fault the third person is, in a sense, fair, but if you're just saying it's that person's fault, I think you're mistaking the like a tree for the forest. Right? It's the forest that's the issue.
Sure, but that's why I said plurality and not majority, right? 27% can still be the most. I think the other thing there that's worth mentioning, though, and this maybe not the place to wrap, but I think maybe the overall vibes point to what we mentioned before. I didn't say it publicly because I was worried about jinxes, right? As soon as the Fire were awarded that penalty, in the back of my head, I said, oh, they're losing this game. And you, I think, texted me either Friday afternoon or maybe it was Saturday morning, like, this feels like a trap. And ultimately it was, right? And I think we both would agree, like, the Fire, no amount of a potential a great clearance from TLB there, or another great individual performance from somebody else, I think was going to lift you out of a game that I think the team didn't deserve to win.
Yeah, the team didn't deserve to win. It was it. Look, the Fire struggled to win physical battles last night. They struggled with it sometimes last year, and they just didn't do it right. Like, it didn't feel like it felt like a game where I think everyone that saw that game were like, "Oh man, maybe the Fire will get lucky and walk away with 3 points in this one."
Yeah.
Right? And like when it takes until the later stages, like the very late stages of the match against the team that won the wooden spoon last year, they're better this year, sure, but like we're starting at a very low level for them to improve from. And you don't get a goal from open play through the vast majority of the game, and then you get a penalty that, I mean, look, it was a handball. That penalty's fair. The one on Dean is just like, there's never going to be a handball rule that makes everyone happy, and like this is just one of the ones where I, from my vantage point, I thought he was pushed, and I thought his arm went up because that's what happens when somebody pushes you from behind and you're going forward as a result. He was not looking at the ball, so to think that he made himself bigger in a way that was trying to stop a ball that he didn't know was coming is ridiculous. That ball was going out. It wasn't on net. It was not a goal scoring opportunity. If all the players were deleted from that pitch from the time the ball was in the air, it's not anywhere in the net, right? But it is the rule, and like whatever. And the other handball is like a little bit more deliberate. I don't think that that was a case of somebody trying to play volleyball with a soccer ball, right? But fine.
Yeah. You can't judge intent, right? You can only judge the action.
Right. And but for the Fire to have won that way would have felt lucky, and I think that a draw would have felt like, all right, you know what I mean?
Yeah. A
But
draw would have felt like escaping with a point.
yeah, I mean,
To me.
yes and no, right? Like the Fire did have some chances on net. Like, there were some times that, it was only 2 shots that were on target, but a number of other dangerous, like a win wouldn't have felt right. I think that if it had ended 0-0 on a cold, dreary night when everything felt cold and dreary, including the action on the pitch, I don't think anybody would have been like, oh, well, that was unfair. I think when you adjust for expectations, then sure.
Yeah.
The Fire getting a point.
Unfair is not, I don't know. To me, it's like, again, personal thought on that one, but I don't think it's unreasonable to say like the Fire would have been lucky to get a point. I think to your point earlier, when you look at those 2 rosters,
The Fire should have won. It should have been a comfortable win.
They should have won by multiple goals, right? They should have.
everyone we talked in the locker room after was like, we knew the game that DC was going to play. We knew they were going to be compact. We knew they were going to try to be physical, and we didn't have a way of like nothing was like Marin said. Is like we weren't surprised by any of this, because they knew it was going to happen, and then but they played like they didn't really have a plan for addressing it, or that they weren't able to address it. And there may have been a plan, it wasn't put in action.
Well, talk about a plan that wasn't put in action, Tim.
And
Let's
the other
talk
thing.
about. Oh.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, we might have been about to say the same thing. That being, there was a stoppage for a period of time due to a complaint from Tai Baribo of some inappropriate language coming from spectators. Kind of hand in hand with that, I'll let you talk a little bit more about the actual reporting side of it. Just while we're also speaking about crowd behavior, there were a few sparse moments of the chant coming through. I know I heard from some people who were in the section at the game that the fire staff was down and communicating with different spectators, but it doesn't sound like anything has come out of it in terms of removals or bans in that respect.
Which the cards that the fire passed out to in the supporter section, not two people in the
Yes.
supporter section, but like that are in the cup holders, right? Um, say that if you engage in that kind of behavior, you will get kicked out, and so for
It's
that to
happened
be,
several times in 2 games, and there hasn't been anybody removed yet, just for context.
yeah, and that's so to me that is a big issue, right? Because it's if you nothing is worse than an empty threat. Not threatening anything is worse than an empty threat because then you're not failing to live up to the standards that you are setting. Um, and I think that that's maybe the biggest issue here. After the game, Zink did say that he felt like the fire were starting to get some pressure. And I think I didn't see it as much until the rewatch because I didn't recall it at the time because I'm just like cold, dreary fire didn't do enough. It did feel like maybe they were starting to get a little bit closer to it. There could have been a breakthrough. I don't think it was imminent. But then that stoppage did really kind of just grind things to a halt. They didn't say on the English language broadcast what was going on. Spanish, they had a producer there. We were able to get more information about that, about what went on. I asked PRO, the referees, about it via the pool report. A slur or discriminatory language was directed to Tai Baribo was basically the response that I got. We didn't know what the word was. Baribo seemed upset about it. He seemed to want to get the referee's attention afterwards. And, it just, look, I think that it's not a high chance, but I think that there is a chance that could have cost the Fire a goal from open play, and then it's a different game because it was 0-0 at that point. I have a statement from the Fire about it, which is, I'll just read it out. And during last night's match, we were notified of an alleged incident in which an individual was reported to have made a derogatory remark toward a player on the field. In response, we immediately deployed additional security to the sideline near the reported location. Chicago Fire FC does not tolerate derogatory or abusive behavior of any kind. Any attendees found in violation of this policy are subject to removal and/or ban. We appreciate the cooperation of our fans in helping to maintain a safe and inclusive atmosphere for everyone. Now, with that, I've been trying to figure out what was said, and I mean, not necessarily by whom in terms of names and faces, but it seems like it was the word used in the chant that was said. It seemed like, you said that it started a couple times and died out. From what I gather from people that I've talked to, there were several people that were not part of an established SG. They're not regulars in the supporters section that started the chant, and quickly the more established supporters were quick to go over them and talk to them about how they couldn't do it. It seems like that was the word. I don't have enough to definitively report this, but it seems like that was what was said. I say this in the context of, I think there have been a lot of assumptions floating out there because Tai Baribo is an Israeli international.
It was reported that it was and I'd have to find the initial statement from PRO. The initial statement from PRO after the game made it sound like it was a racial slur directed at an Israeli player.
The statement. They made it sound like it was derogatory language that was said to a player. I don't think the statement was incorrect or inaccurate. I can read that statement out right now if I pull it up.
I'm not trying to say it was intentionally misleading, but I think that's the way it read.
There was a reported discriminatory slur made by an unidentified spectator directed towards DC United number 9 Tai Baribo. It doesn't say anything about the nature of the slur. It's just that it was a discriminatory slur. It doesn't say against whom. I think that maybe people read into that. Maybe that's natural. Maybe the wording should have been a little bit tighter from PRO, but this is part of the issue with the format that we've got of all I was able to do was write in a question in a form and get an answer. There's no opportunity for follow-ups. There's no opportunity by, hey, can you say a little bit about the nature? Was it, something personal to the player, or was it a other unacceptable? I no chance to do that.
They also may not have known, in fairness, right? They're going
Yeah,
purely
exactly.
on what
All
Tai
of that.
Baribo tells them.
Right. And again, is it really responsible for them to just be repeating what one player tells them happened when there's going to be an investigation? I sort of doubt that it will uncover exactly what was said and by whom, but I, there's a lot to wade into there. Um, I will say it's more information than we would have gotten a few years ago when we wouldn't have been able to do this at all. It's more information than I think we would have gotten initially with the format of this, with initially responses that PRO were giving were so generic that it was almost just like, no, I get that because I've seen the FIFA laws of the game before. I'm trying to ask how the laws were applied in this case. I think this is clearer. I think it's useful naming the who it was said by, so an unidentified spectator. So that's not from a player, not from somebody on the pitch. Directed towards DC United number 9 Tai Baribo. So who it's directed to. And behind all of this is, just connecting the dots, because I think it's been a long time, but also not that long. Tai Baribo was involved. He scored a brace early against the Fire in that what became a 3-0 loss for the Fire in their last game of the season, when the chant was a story and play had to be halted. Berhalter had to go over and talk to supporters. And frankly, just given the chant, the number of times that it recurred and all of that, it probably should have been escalated higher in terms of the CONCACAF policy around those events.
Yeah, and look, maybe candidly, maybe we can cut this out if you feel like it's too strong of something to say. I think at a certain point, to what you mentioned before, an empty threat is maybe more harmful than no threat at all. And as much respect as I have for the people in the Fire organization who work directly with supporters, and frankly, maybe they have some very good and healthy reluctance to call in Monterey security personnel for obvious reasons. At a certain point, you can't continue to allow this to happen. And frankly, there's way too much apathy for it from regular supporters in the section. They're not the ones doing the chant, but I've got 30 people around me at a game and I'm the only one turning around to say something. I think that's an issue. And there are plenty of others who are doing that too. I just mean to say it's not as universally done as it should be, frankly.
Yeah, that's fair. Obviously you weren't there for this one. There were people that
yes,
and I do have from multiple accounts that there were people that did it, so it's not
same as well for what it's worth.
Yes, and I think that the organized supporter leadership and a lot of the people are behind it. I don't think that are behind efforts to stamp it out, and I think they understand the gravity of it. Yeah, I think that it is if you see something, you do have to say something, and it starts with saying something to the person or to, the sort of leaders from the supporters section if you don't feel comfortable addressing them directly. And it's becoming a trend, right? I think that I heard spatterings of it in the Fire's home opener. But
there were definitively there were.
And even if we don't include that this has been a story that has affected the run of play now in two of the Fire's most recent 3 home games. And any is too many, but this is starting to be a trend, and it's a trend that was not a trend in a very, very long time in the game in MLS.
I don't think I heard it in all of 2025 until the playoffs. I don't remember hearing it in 2024 either, when things were bad.
Well, yeah, in the League's Cup, but yeah, other than that.
Yeah, fair. I mean to say, and yeah, but yeah. Anywho, to end, I suppose we'll end on a somber note, but that is maybe where we drop off for the day. No man of the match in a loss. I'm making the executive decision there. Shocking, right? Actually, you know what? Shout out Tai Baribo, man of the match. He played really well. Anyway, that takes us to the end of the show. We really appreciate you joining us and being here and listening along for yet another, I don't know, longer than we expected of Tim and I talking ball. So thanks for tuning in. If you could give it a like and a subscribe wherever you're listening, whether that's Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever, it goes a long way, and it would certainly be appreciated. If you could then also go subscribe on YouTube, you'll find full video of the pod there. If you're an audio only listener, you'll also find any other live programming that we have for the remainder of the summer there as well. So would recommend going and subscribing there. And then if you could follow us on any and all social medias, wherever you consume soccer content, we'll be there posting and sharing Men in Red 97 any matters. And as always, for Tim, for our illustrious producer Austin, I'm John. Thank you so much for joining us around the bonfire, and come on, you Men in Red.